Welcome to today's Explainer, everyone. We are stepping right through the looking glass today into the absolute dawn of 20th century weird fiction. For you literature students and focus learners out there, we're going to be deconstructing Abraham Merritt's 1917 narrative, The Gateway Through the Dragon Glass. Now, the story is a totally fascinating artifact of its era because it brilliantly bridges the gap between supernatural horror and portal fantasy, and it asks a genuinely terrifying question. What exactly happens when human greed unlocks a doorway to an ancient, predatory cosmos?
There was never so much life in metal and wood since the jealous Almighty breathed life into it for a punishment. Wow. That line perfectly sets the eerie, cosmic tone of Merritt's work, right? We aren't just dealing with some inanimate, magical object here. We're dealing with something alive, ancient, and deeply, deeply dangerous. Okay, let's dive into this and see exactly how Merritt builds this terrifying world.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The era of supernatural horror. 2. The duality of the dragon glass. 3. Building the Rack domain. 4. The catalyst for psychological descent. And 5. The final gateway. First up, the era of supernatural horror, specifically looking at the imperialist backdrop. So, Merritt grounds his cosmic horror in very real, tangible human history. The narrative kicks off with James Herndon, a guy who is worth 10 millions, who actually participated in the looting of the Forbidden City in Peking during the suppression of the Boxer Rebellion. In fact, Merritt directly compares this act to Goths sacking Rome. This timeline is absolutely crucial for our analysis. The story starts with acquisitive greed, right? A Westerner taking a sacred ancient artifact by force. A few weeks later, Herndon returns to New York and literally sets up a shrine to his plundered treasures. And by the present day of the narrative, this imperialist theft has resulted in Herndon's mysterious, violent disappearances. Basically, the greed of the real world effectively summons the horror of the supernatural one. Let's move on to the duality of the dragon glass. Is it a treasure or is it a trap? Picture this. The dragon glass is described with this lush, totally overwhelming sensory detail. It's a translucent green oval stone, glimmering like the sea. Framing it are 12 intricately jeweled dragons with bright emerald eyes, ivory fangs, and gold claws. And right at the base, there's a 13th dragon, thin and red, biting its own scorpion-tipped tail around a topaz disc. The text tells us that just the first glimpse of this thing takes your breath away. It's a masterpiece of ancient, almost divine craftsmanship. But here's where it gets wild. Merritt employs this stark, terrifying contrast. Now, what's really interesting here is how, on one hand, it's a beautiful treasure, shimmering with silver, vermilion, and gold. But on the other hand, it is a highly dangerous prison. It's quite literally a gateway created by a banished entity known as Hao Zan, or Rack the Wonder Worker. Rack was given power over souls, basically drawing them into his domain to build up his own twisted people. So the glass isn't just a mirror you hang on the wall, it's a snare. It's a psychological trap set by a cosmic watcher. And we get the super chilling hint of the trap early on through Herndon's boat steward, Wu Sing. Suddenly dropping his usual demeanor completely, Wu Sing speaks in perfect English, and his eyes momentarily turn yellow. And we're talking the exact buttercup yellow of the Wonder Worker himself. He looks at Herndon and asks, "Has the master augustly counted the cost of his possession?" Talk about a red flag. The artifact doesn't just passively sit in a room. It is actively observing, testing, and warning the person who possesses it. Let's cross over now to Section 3, Building the Rack Domain. Cosmic dread versus whimsy. The differences between classic portal fantasy and early 20th century horror are just striking. Think about your typical portal fantasy. You've usually got benign guides and whimsical lands to help you fulfill some heroic destiny. But Merritt, he aligns way more with his darker, cosmic contemporaries like Lovecraft or Dunsany. Over in the Rack domain, the entities are predatory. The landscape isn't whimsical, it is filled with cosmic dread, bizarre alien geometry, and entities that are basically playing a sadistic game with you. Instead of becoming a destined hero, the traveler faces eternal, cyclical entrapment. It's a system literally designed to harvest souls. And Merritt's world building here? It relies heavily on absolute sensory overload. The rock domain features a colossal pyramid peak cutting into a sky of chrysoprase, which is this incredibly vivid apple-green gemstone color. 7 moons circle this mountain, bathing everything in a pale emerald glow.
We hear of the fires of life that rebirth entangled souls for 10,000 lives, a deeply unsettling auditory motif that completely haunts Herndon. It is a city of ivory and shining greens. It's gorgeous, yes, but fundamentally alien and totally apathetic to human survival.
And all of this brings us to the number 7, which brilliantly illustrates the duality of the world Merit has created. On one hand, you have the majestic, beautiful 7 moons of Rak, glowing peacefully over that ivory city. But on the other hand, you have the 7 razor-sharp talons of the unthinkable, apocalyptic beast that guards the gateway. Beauty and absolute horror, inextricably linked by the exact same numeric motif. Section 4, Catalyst for Psychological Descent, the Anatomy of Obsession. So, the crucial point is, how does this affect the human mind? Well, we can actually trace Herndon's descent, his anatomy of obsession, in 4 distinct steps. First, as we mentioned, it begins with acquisitive greed, the looting and peeking. Second, it morphs into fixation. Herndon literally places the glass in his bedroom with shaded lights just so he can wake up and stare at it in the middle of the night. Third comes complete immersion. The carved dragons begin to spin, the glass turns into a green haze, and he physically crosses over, falling deeply in love with an otherworldly girl named Santu. And finally, step 4 is relapse and complete surrender. Even after barely escaping with his life, his obsession compels him to go back. And the physical toll of this obsession? It is written directly on Herndon's body. When the narrator investigates, Herndon opens his shirt and reveals his chest. The text says, "Across the white flesh of his breast ran 7 healing furrows. He was plowed by the gigantic claw of the Wonderworker's beast." These physical scars are the inescapable, visceral manifestation of Rak's grip on his mind. He has been permanently, undeniably marked by his obsession. When the narrator begs Herndon to destroy the glass, to just break this hypnotic illusion and save himself, Herndon's response is absolute. He says, "Break it? Not for the 10,000 lives that are the toll of Rak. Why, it's my only road back to her." And this is the ultimate tragedy of the narrative. The rational world is completely abandoned. Herndon is fully aware of the apocalyptic beast. He's fully aware of the yellow-eyed Wonderworker playing a sadistic game with him, yet he actively chooses the dangerous portal over his own safety, all because of his fixation on Santhu. Which brings us to our final section, the final gateway, an infectious narrative. We have to look at the infectious nature of this portal fantasy because it spreads like a virus. Ultimately, Herndon disappears a second time, taking literally an elephant gun through the glass to go hunt a cosmic god. But the horror doesn't stop there. Actually, by the terms of Herndon's will, the narrator himself inherits the dragon glass. And what does the narrator do? Despite knowing all the horrors, despite seeing the scars with his own eyes, the narrator admits to sitting night after night before the glass, just waiting for Herndon and Santhu to return. The cycle of obsession has seamlessly claimed a brand new victim, and in doing so, it pulls us, the listeners, right into the psychological trap alongside him. So I want to leave you all with this final thought to ponder as you continue your literary studies. Is the dragon glass merely a magical gateway to another world? Or is it a predator in disguise, perfectly mirroring the cyclical, inescapable nature of human obsession? Merit's brilliant framing really suggests that the true horror isn't just what lives on the other side of the glass, but the human greed and fixation that inevitably compel us to step through it in the first place. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the worlds hidden just beyond the mirror.